Got straight 9s at GCSEs, straight A's at A-levels, and I got accepted into 2 medical schools out of the 4 that I applied to. Everyone will usually tell you to do 2 things, right? So this is if you're anywhere in, for example, study YouTube, study TikTok or whatever, the things you've probably heard, the advice you've probably heard from almost everyone, it's active recall and spaced repetition, right? So I don't know how to draw spaced, but that's spaced repetition. So these are the 2 things that almost everyone is going to tell you to do. And even Ali Abdal, one of like the biggest productivity YouTubers nowadays, started off as a study YouTuber, was preaching these 2 things, and he was a Cambridge graduate. It was a Cambridge medical school, right? So it's literally like the most difficult course at the most difficult university, and he was, I think, number 1 or number 2 in his cohort as well. So he's pretty much the tippity top, right? You can't get much smarter in that sense than him. And he was doing these videos about how to study. It showed how he studied, and it was active recall and spaced repetition. He showed some studies and some scientific research behind it, and he said that this is what you have to be doing. To be honest, right, he's good-willed there, and there is some research there, but if you look into the research, you realize that all of the research done is all about isolated information. So active recall and spaced repetition is really good at memorizing isolated pieces of information, meaning like a list of groceries or a list of just random words, etc. That's how you memorize them, right? Learning, your subjects are not isolated. Think about chemistry. Almost every topic is related to each other. Fundamentally, it has to be, because it's about reality, right? Same thing, physics, biology, etc. All of your subjects, yes, the reason they're subjects is because they have interrelated topics. So if you try and memorize everything in isolated bits, you're really just missing out like a crucial area of the subject, and you're not going to be able to apply the information very well, and you're not going to really understand the information very well. And that's actually one of the reasons why I was able to get straight 9s at GCSEs without really understanding what was going on in, for example, my physics classes, etc. It's because I just memorized everything and I was able to regurgitate some stuff, but I felt like a fraud in some senses, and I knew that it was going to get harder and harder exponentially as the topics got more difficult. For example, during my year 12 exams, one sort of anecdote for that is, for my GCSEs, it was around 1,000 to 2,000 flashcards that I had to go through, right? Just for half of my A-levels, which was year 12, I was still doing the same method. I had 6,000 flashcards, and I think that was just for one topic. That was just for biology. So you can imagine sort of the exponential rise. And then obviously I'm looking to get into medical school after that, which is going to be even denser to some extent. But you can see like this, it's just going to get even more. I mean, I've seen some Anki decks, and people are using like 15k flashcards for just 1 year of learning, and obviously that's times 5 for medical school. It just gets completely bizarre, right? You don't want to be doing that many flashcards a day. Like, there's no way you can even get through all of that. So it's stupid. Just don't rely on just these 2. It doesn't matter how many times you see YouTubers telling you to do that. Don't, because it might work for your GCSEs, it might work for your A-levels. It just gets more and more unlikely that it will work later down the line. And another thing to mention is, for a lot of people it just won't, because what you'll find is people that are already quite smart, intelligent, they will find a lot of success with these, because they're naturally thinking about the links between the topics, right? So they're sort of doing the cognitive processes in the back of their mind, because they're sort of intelligent in that way academically, and active recall and spaced repetition work for them because they're able to process that information well. If you're not doing that, a lot of people just won't be able to do that. So a lot of people will be doing Anki. They'll be doing, the reason I drew this is because it's the icon of Anki, which is what everyone uses for their flashcards. So a lot of people will do Anki, and you don't want to be in that position, and you want to do what I'm going to show you next, right? So the alternative, it's not actually much of an alternative, because you can incorporate active recall and spaced repetition into it as well. They're just sort of add-ons. But the idea here is, instead of memorizing things, you want to encode them, right? So if you think about, I mean, there's always like that one class that sort of just stuck with you forever. So it might be, for example, in chemistry, you might have gotten taught something about like atoms and their electron shells. Okay, this is probably going above GCSE, but there are things that you will just naturally remember, and that's just because you've encoded it in a way that you sort of made all of the relationships prominent. So it's hard to give like a really good example, but I'm sure a lot of you will have experiences where you can go into an exam and there are some questions, whether or not you've revised or not, right? There's some questions you will just fundamentally know how to answer because for some reason you just remember it from class, or you remember reading it in the textbook, and that isn't just a random bit of information that you've luckily like magically memorized. The chances are is you sort of managed to create relationships between the different topics, and that's why your brain held on to it as important information. That's why it kept it remembered it, right? So what your brain will do, if I give you like a list of numbers or random words like elephant, won't have to type elephant, hippo, break, tree, house, right? And then 10 minutes later I ask you to repeat that, your brain's just going to forget it. Your brain is efficient, so it's not going to try and remember that because there's no reason for it to remember that. Nothing's telling it that the information is important, right? What you have to do with your subjects is tell your brain that the information you're learning is important. How do you do that? Is by encoding. How do you encode? Well, it's quite a complex topic, but in essence, let me actually, this is what encoding will look like, right? So the further up this scale you are when you're learning things, the more likely or the more encoded it will be to some extent. Like, you don't quote me on all of this stuff, like I'm not a learning science researcher, but this is sort of what I've understood from everything. So for example, if you're evaluating information, right? Well, let's look at an analyzing. If you're analyzing information, you can see this is drawing connections among ideas, right? So if you're analyzing information in your chemistry lesson, what you're actually doing there is you're thinking about the relationships between the different topic areas that you've just been going through. So if, for example, we think about boiling points, right? So you're sort of analyzing, you're learning about the boiling points of different elements like halogens, etc., right? What you can do there to sort of tell your brain that this is important is analyze and draw connections among different topic areas. So again, if you're learning the boiling points of halogens, maybe you can think about all of the different connections as to why even boiling point and halogens are actually related. So then that can, in between there is something like, I'm not really strong on my chemistry because I haven't done this in a year, but it'll be something like atomic properties, right? So it's like the properties of an atom as to like why it's boiling, etc. And if you're thinking about boiling points of halogens, you can also, there's loads of different topics that sort of branch out from there. For example, like chlorine reactions, etc., because that's a halogen, right? And then obviously there's boiling points of something else, like the metals, right? Like the group 1 metals. And there's lots of other topics that in your GCSE that you need to know that is related to that. And there's also, again, there's an explanation as to why you're actually learning about the boiling points of halogens. There's a reason behind that, right? It's hard to do it when I don't actually remember the reasoning behind all of this because I haven't done it in like a year, but there is a reason. So what you're looking for really, first of all, you're drawing the relationships. So you're looking at like why you're learning about the boiling point, right? There's loads of different boiling points and you can sort of actually even connect these, so you can look at the similarities between the group 1 metals and the halogens. Like maybe some of them have similar boiling points, and you can think about why do they have similar boiling points. Well, you might be going a bit into A-level there, but it could be something to do with like the number of protons they have, or neutrons, and like the density of the actual atom, etc., right? So I'm probably butchering a lot of this because I don't remember my chemistry that well, but it's the same idea with any other subject. So let me try and think of something else. History, right? I think actually history is a bit out there. What subject did everyone else take? Maths is a bit difficult to do with this. I didn't really do that, and to be honest, I dropped maths at A-level, so I'm not the best person to ask about maths. But there is something else that I'll use biology because I feel like that's the simplest, right? The most common. But again, you've got biology. So what my A level looked like was like, first of all, we're looking at the cell, right? So we're looking at the cell, the nucleus, etc. You got the ribosomes, stuff like that, right? And actually, a lot of our topic areas went even further into that. So we had things about DNA transcription. So DNA, obviously that's related to the nucleus of the cell. We had a lot of topic areas about how proteins were made, and that was actually related to the nucleus and the ribosomes of the cell, right? And then actually there was a link between DNA and proteins because they were both using bases, right? And DNA was actually coding for the proteins, right? So there's a link there. That's analyzing the information, right? And then you can go even deeper. Let me try and think of something else. There's like a completely unrelated topic. For example, in the textbook, meiosis and mitosis, right? So these are two. This is like reproduction. So this is cellular reproduction, asexual, sorry, and this is sexual reproduction. These two are like miles apart in the book, right? So this is in the second half of the textbook. This stuff is in the first half, right? But then you can figure out, right, these two have a massive connection to the DNA topic and also actually to the protein topic, right? Because the proteins, as a cell is expanding, it needs proteins to be made to create the new cell membranes, etc., and to actually duplicate all of the organelles inside, right? So what you'll find is everything you're learning is really interconnected with each other. And that's what you're doing here by drawing connections among ideas. You have to sort of understand the relations between all of these different ideas, okay? And what you can figure out here is that the method we're actually going to use to study. If you even just look at this, you can sort of hazard a guess at what we're going to be doing. We're going to be creating mind maps. We're not going to be memorizing anything. We're going to be creating mind maps. So that's sort of like the best method that you want to use. I'll actually show you some of my mind maps, but yeah, I mean we're gonna have like an idea, something we're learning, and we're gonna branch out and figure out like how does that connect to everything else that we're learning, right? And we're not going to use mind maps in the sense that, oh, we've got topic 1, cells, and then we're just going to write everything down about cells and draw the connections. Like, no, that's not how it works. Mind map is going to have to be holistic. So you have to think about the entire topic, the entire subject as a whole, and try and fit everything into one singular mind map. So let me try and get up my mind map in a moment. Again, the next thing as well, you want to be really, these are the two things that sort of no one is doing at the moment, right? Analyzing and evaluating. So evaluating again is similar, but instead of just drawing the connections, right, between topics, what you're doing is you're evaluating the connection. So you're wondering, why is this connected? How important is this connection, right? How important is it for me to know that, like, the full basis of DNA, right? You might think it's not important, but then if you think about it and you think about all of the other topics, you'll realize that, oh, actually it is important because it ends up determining the triplets. And the triplets are the ones, the triplet bases, right, are useful for the tRNA, etc. And then you sort of get to this point, right, where you're really asking why. Every time you learn something, you're asking, why am I learning this? And you're able to like draw all of these different conclusions, and you can draw importance. And then you come up with this really holistic map of your subject. And this is exactly how your brain works, which is why you want your notes to sort of emulate that and show that. These are the two things that sort of skyrocketed my grades. But again, this took me around six months or so to actually figure out how to do correctly. Sorry, I as soon as year 12 hit, I got my grades, my predicted grades for A stars from just cramming with Anki and active recall, and then I realized this is gonna just be too much for year 13. If I'm gonna have another year of this, I'm gonna end up with over 20,000 flashcards that I have to go through every single month or so, right? And it was just unsustainable. So I thought this is a time for me to actually try and figure this out. And what I did to try and figure this out was just use it on my admissions tests. So I had the BMAT, which is medical school admissions test, where you're sort of just learning all 4 sciences and maths as well. So all 3 sciences and maths, you get tested on all of those. And while it says it's GCSE standard questions, they're actually a lot harder than GCSE. It's just the knowledge required is GCSE level, right? So the BMAT, again, is medical admissions test. A difficult exam. It's similar to your A levels in a sense where you're getting tested on knowledge, right? And then again, I had medical interviews as well, which again you get tested on knowledge of like the NHS, of ethics, etc. So that's where I was trialing out all of these different ideas, and I can show you all of those mind maps as well. And you can see my mind map progression as it gets better and better. So I will do that in a moment, but that's sort of the idea, right? Like I said, you know now that mind mapping is the best method, right? And you also know that mind mapping is very difficult. So you're going to start out as a newbie mind mapper, right? A newbie studier. And you're going to have to keep trying this, right? You're going to have to keep getting better. But as you progress, your mind maps are going to become better and better to the point where like you're really just understanding a subject on a much deeper level than anyone else, and you don't memorize a single thing, so you can actually apply your knowledge. So when you get asked a question that is out of spec, and sort of like testing you on how to use 2 different topic areas at once, you're going to get that mark, whereas everyone else is not going to. And you're going to be able to spend less and less time on actually studying as you get further and further into this. So it is a challenge. Like you do have to learn. It is difficult. That's why if you're in year 10 or year 12 and you've got time, I'd set aside like 2 hours a day, etc., just to be studying and to be practicing how to study. And that's sort of how you have to look at it. You're investing in your study skills. Right, as your study skills go up, the amount of time you have to spend studying goes down, and it's an investment that you have to make. I mean, if you're going to university and you want to, I mean, you've got three more years as well after that. If you're going to be in education for that long, you want to invest into your study skills, because then you can save exponential amounts of time later down the line. Okay, so I've just gone bottom of the barrel to try and find my old mind maps. But yeah, so I mean, if we just look at this one, you can actually see, first of all, again, the same thing. This is like one of the first times I've actually started studying. I think this is a picture taken in around February. So this is one of my mocks are coming up. Start studying a bit. Mocks, I end up getting like BCC, and again, it just proves that I wasn't actually listening at all in any of my subjects. I got a B in computer science because, again, it's pretty easy. Other 2 I got a C's in, and yeah, I revised like a week for that, and nothing over 2 hours. I've got another screenshot where I was at 2:24, but like this is all where you can see where I actually start learning again and start going all in. And you can see one of my first few mind maps. It doesn't let you zoom in here. Actually, it does. There we go. So you can see here my first ever mind map. I think this is probably a bit further in to the point where I've done this mind map, so I don't think I did this in one session. You can see this one, this one right here. This one took 2 hours to make, so you can see how sort of bland, or like how much information is actually on here. It took 2 hours to figure out this is the most important information for my subject and how it related to each other. And this is all of paper 2 that I'm doing here, so this is 1 year's worth of content. And yeah, so you can sort of see it progress from here to here. Again, I can't really find the progression pictures anywhere else. I could have downloaded these photos, but it would take too long. But yeah, you can see it's progressing. I'm going to show you actually like my first ever mind map. So this is when I actually tried it for the first time. This isn't the right date. It was actually in year 12, I think, near the end of year 12, where I first came across Justin Sung, and I figured out, yeah, maybe it's worth a try. And you can see how bad sort of the mind map is. Like, there's really nothing there. And this is what most mind maps will look like, is a cloud, and then you sort of try and branch everything out from there. This is not great at all, and I'll show you hopefully the progression that I go through. So again, this is in year 13, and this is biology, right? So this is quite a bit ahead of that first mind map. But again, this is actually, let me see if I've got the, yeah, so this one is in year 12 as well. So this is another one of my first ever mind maps that I've ever tried. And this one actually, again, you can sort of see there's a bit more going on, instead of just pieces of like paragraphs. Like I think on this one it's just words sort of connected to each other, and you don't really get much from it, right? In this one you've got a bit more. You've got some sort of colouring in, showing like a heavier arrows that show a bit more importance. You've got different colours going on. You've got a lot of different things going on. It's not amazing, and I'm still like writing out equations, which like you really shouldn't be memorizing these sort of stuff in this way. But this was actually one of my better mind maps, and actually this was the first time I had a chemistry topic exam on halogens, right? So these are pretty difficult exams. I would usually, how I'd score 90 odd percent on these and get like top of the class in them, would be by just memorizing all of the past paper questions, similarly to how I showed you in the previous 4 videos actually. I would just memorize all of the past paper questions. I'd turn them into flashcards and just memorize all of them, and that would take around 8 to 10 hours for one topic. I'd spend all of my weekend just doing like flashcards like that for 8 to 10 hours. Like making them and doing them would take like a while, but I'd be putting in 10 hours of work to revise for this topic test. Almost no one else was doing that for a topic test, right? So it made sense why I was getting the highest grades. I did that for a few, and then I sort of fell off. I couldn't really be asked. But this was the first time when I stopped doing that, right? I didn't actually revise at all, and all I did was this mind map, which again took me maybe 2 hours max, and I actually did pretty well on this. I wasn't top of the class, but I'd spent drastically less, and I got like 80%, and that was the first time where I thought, okay, this is actually going to work. Like there's something to this method. There were things where like I knew I was so if you're memorizing and like you're doing really well with Anki, you're going to take a dip in grades when you switch to this method. If you're already like struggling and you're not doing very well, then don't sort of get into the bad habit of memorization. You can just go straight to something like this. But I saw a dip in my grades, right? So I'm not scoring the top of my class anymore. I'm losing marks on areas that I otherwise would have got marks on, because I would have memorized the questions before and I would have known the answer word for word. So again, they're using past paper questions for these topic tests. But I noticed as well that I sort of understood this topic much more than any of the other topics where I was memorizing stuff. I sort of understood why things were the way they were, why different oxidation states were even the case, and why you'd get different colors coming from these different reactions. So this is sort of like the first time I sort of grasp this, but I don't really use it. I'm nearing my year 12 exams. I don't really have time to try out new methods when I need to get high predicted grades for my university applications, right? So you have a bit of a time skip, and I come to year 13, and this is where I'm first like studying and trying this out. Okay, I think this is probably like a random date in sometime during the winter term. Again, where I'm sort of trying to. So what happens? I think I free up some time, right? So again, the reason why I would always have this hard limit of 2 hours a day at maximum. I would never spend more than 2 hours. And the reason why I couldn't actually study my A-levels was because I had medical admissions going on. So I was spending all of those 2 hours either on BMAT, UCAT, or medical interviews. So these are really, really dense, difficult topics to difficult admissions tests. And I managed to score top 20% in the country for both of those, but only again, I'm spending 2 hours a day maximum. For UCAT I spent 4 hours, but there's some nuance there, but yeah, sort of the idea, right? And then by the time this all ended, I had like a tiny gap of like 2 weeks or 1 week where I was actually able to study my A-levels again. And my A-levels again, I wasn't listening in lessons, so I had to sort of start from scratch. And I tried this method again, and it's sort of the same issue with my first few mind maps, is where it's just loads of different words, and like there's no real way I can sort of expect myself to look at this and understand what's going on unless I'd spend some time to understand it, right? So I was getting all of these different connections going on, and it was going pretty well. But again, like I couldn't really understand what was going on. Even looking at it right now, it's too complicated for me. Like I don't know what's going on. But yeah, there was an issue with that. But again, I slowly progressed this. I'll show you how you can get these better, and where I actually learn how to improve my mind maps. This is an early mind map. This is what like most of yours will look like as well for a while. And this is where I start to realize, okay, maybe Justin Sung actually, or the research basically is just saying that you want to be condensing information, keeping it very simple, and images actually wherever you can. So things that represent ideas, symbols, etc. You want to be able to look at something at a glance and understand the whole scope of the topic. This is the first time again where I start to try it. I get some free time where I'm not studying for something else, and I again try to do this for topic 6 in biology. So I mean it's pretty decent, but again this takes like an hour just to pull this together. And then I don't have time. I don't get to look at it again for like a month, 2 months, and I sort of forget it again, right? And here we go. I think this is where we come to the actual meat. So these are the 2 mind maps that sort of got me my A in biology, right? So this one, you can sort of see that this is a similar one to the one I was showing 5 minutes ago in the messages. So this is what it ended up spanning out to. This is how big it became, and again it's actually not that big. You can glance at it and you can see there's a lot going on, but I can sort of follow it even now, even a year later. I can sort of see my thought process and what the hell is going on here. You can see that the topic in the middle, actually I can't remember what that was. Let me try and zoom in. Survival, right? So it's not even a topic, right? This is what I figured out is what a lot of the biology is linked around. It's around the survival of an organism, right? And that's sort of linked to evolution and the natural selection side of things. And then I also linked to why the heart is pumping is because it helps you survive, and why the heart is pumping linked to blood cells. And then there was lots of stuff around blood cells, so like glucose and the pH of the blood. Obviously blood also led to tissue fluid, which was again that was about the sort of water pressure in your arteries, and that was linked to your kidneys, which was linked to because you went even more in depth in the kidneys about the nephrons. So these are specific cells in the kidneys. This was a whole topic itself. Just this picture is like 10 pages in a textbook, right? Maybe not 10. It's like 3 full pages of like just blocks of text in a textbook, right? This is like a whole lesson or 2 in this just one picture, right? And then I mean you go back around and you can see, okay, the heart is also linked to the nerves, and the nerves have got all of their own little things. You've got snare proteins, you've got snare proteins, and actually the nerves, you don't get taught this, right? So nerves obviously release these neurotransmitters, and what you don't get taught is that some nerves will be doing this to a muscle, and then I sort of drawn that here, and you can see that actually leads to a different topic, which is how muscles interact. And you got a myosin and actin interaction here, which is again linked to this sort of idea of muscle cells and I bands and A bands and etc. But it's really complicated. But you can see this is the entirety of paper 2 in one sort of image, right? And this is what I went into my paper 2 sort of knowing. I could even envision this in my actual exam. I could envision the connections, and I sort of understood how everything connected to each other. And this is what got me my A. Literally just this. I've got nothing else. So it's quite funny because sometimes people ask me for my biology notes, right? And I don't have notes. All I can do is give you this image, and that's everything. That's all I've got for my biology. Actually, this was just paper 1, and then over here is paper 2. Paper 1. The other one is paper 2. So paper 1's actually even less dense, right? It's even more simplified, and this is all of paper 1. This is everything, all my notes for paper 1. It's just this single image, which is again pretty interesting. So you can see whole topic here with just the leaf, all of these different ideas that are going on with the leaf. You got all of like sort of digestion and circulation all in here. Then you got immunity over here. You got respiration up there, and then you've got some other stuff about cell cycles and that. I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is my most recent one, but this is everything I went into my biology A level with. And I know I got an A. I'm pretty sure it was a few marks off an A star. It would have been an A star last year, so 2021. So not 2021. It would have been an A star by the 2022 standards, but the 2023 standards were the harshest grade boundaries that we've had, pretty much in all of existence. So even the grade boundaries were harsher than the 2019 ones. So again, yeah, in quite a few different year cohorts, this would have been an A star, and this is all the notes I've got. I think, and yeah, what you can see here actually is not another mind map, but it's actually me doing sort of like a memorization technique here for the first time. So I don't spend much time on memorization, but sometimes I will get off this mind map, and what I did here is I tried to draw the mind map but in a completely different structure. So you can see the heart and the red blood cells and the nerves, etc. But what I've tried to do is link up and connect ideas in different ways, right? So I sort of reversed it, look at the subject in a completely different lens, and this is what I got. So these two are the same sort of, they're both paper 2, right? They're all of paper 2, both of them. But what I've done here is like reversed it, try and looked at it from a different angle and understand different connections. I didn't end up finishing this, I don't think. I probably have. I don't know. Yeah, no, I don't think I ended up finishing this. So you can see there's some topics still missing here, but that's another thing I found pretty useful. Is again, this was I was able to regurgitate this without having to look at this previous thing. I just sat down one day and I was like, instead of actually working on my mind map, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open a blank sheet and put down everything I remember. And this is everything I remember, and this is a lot of information on there. For me at least, not for everyone else, because they don't have the understanding of what's going on here. But that's what you need. You just need to understand yourself. Alright, so yeah, hopefully that explains what's going on. You want to get to this sort of point. Obviously, I'm not saying this is the best mind map ever. This is what worked for me, and I'll probably continue to try and improve this when I get back to education, but I'm on a gap year right now. But this level I think will do you a lot of good, and if you're at your year 10 right now, you've got loads of time and you want to get to this level as fast as possible, and you can just really chillax for your time, right? So there's a few things that we need to go through now. First of all is how do you upskill your study skills? So how do you get better at mind maps, basically? Mind maps, there's a lot of different things surrounding mind maps, but this is just like the idea. The thing that mind map it's just your cognitive like processing, like how you thinking about the information that you're getting in from your subjects. So how do you get good at it? Basically just means how do you get to a point where you can sort of do this on a new topic and do well, right? The second thing you have to do now. Yeah, the second thing is what do you start doing like right now, and so how should you be structuring your work? So the next thing is like how do you get a good structure to your work, right? So I will show you a few things that you need to do to basically get to a good point with your mind maps, to a point where you can actually just you're really good at this and your study skills will get good. Obviously it will take quite a few attempts, and you have to do this a lot of times, and you'll get better and better. But there were a few things that helped me a lot, and it's all from this fellow called Justin Sung. So I'll hopefully show you. The things that I actually found the most helpful were the ones where he sort of just drew his own mind maps and went through exactly how he is thinking about it. So the first time I got exposed to him was this video. So this might be worth a watch. So stop relying on active recall and spaced repetition. That sort of opens your eyes to what's going on. So if you're not doing active recall and spaced repetition, maybe you don't need to really think about it. But these two, again, these three videos, really good watch. And they could sort of help you have a holistic understanding of what I'm trying to tell you to do and why I'm sort of explaining it. You can see again, he is doing a master's degree in 1/6 of the time compared to everyone else, and this is sort of where you want to get to. And this is possible. He's not any genius. What he used to do was spend 20 hours a day revising, and he figured out how to lessen that, right? So same idea. But to get good at your mind maps, you want to watch videos like this. So spend 1 hour studying with me to save 20 hours later. So this is a video where he's going through how he thinks about making a mind map. There's quite a few videos where he's got, so this one's a good one. I'll go through that later. There's quite a few videos where he just helps out other people with their mind map, so that's also helpful. You want to watch like Justin Sung mind map. You really just want to get, like, really understand exactly what the hell is, like, how to do mind map. So this it looks like he's got a playlist here, so this might be, so yeah, these videos are again really useful. You want to be watching what mistakes everyone else is making. You probably want to watch this whole sort of playlist. This will definitely be helpful, particularly, right, one of my favorite videos of his is on a different channel, and this is actually what really gave me a super deep understanding of, like, how we should be doing our mind maps, is these 2 hour study with me sessions, right? So he is learning here someone else's, like, accounting. Actually, I didn't watch these ones. There's one for psychology that was really nice. I can't seem to find it here. I hope he hasn't removed it. Study with me, accounting. All of these seem to be accounting. Justin Sung, study with me. There was a psychology one. That was just really great. This one. This because it's a stream, that's why it's not showing up. But this is a 2 hour video, right? And I think this sort of mirrors your GCSEs and A levels a bit closer than, for example, accounting. But what you'll see is he's sort of coming off. He's using what looks a bit like a textbook, or like some notes that someone's made, right? It's the same idea. You can use a textbook, you can use YouTube videos, you can use whatever content source you want, and then you can watch exactly how he's thinking about information and making his mind map. So you can see this is what his one sort of ends up looking like. And again, there are things he says in this video that just resonate so much. So, like, he talks about how to memorize statistics in a way that makes sense. And again, yeah, so, like, I actually remember this. I watched this video probably like 2 years ago, or a year ago last, and one of the statistics is about universities and their aggression rates. I think it's like all of this is about testosterone, right? So this subject that he's learning right here is about testosterone, and there's 3 different studies. So there's a big time gap between one of the studies, and one of the studies is only on women, one of the studies is only on university kids, another study is only on prison inmates, right? And it's so interesting that I still remember that after having watched that literally a year or 2 ago now, and I haven't looked at this since, right? But I can still remember exactly what was in these notes. And I mean, if I tried a bit more, I'm sure I would have actually remembered the exact dates as well. And he goes through exactly why that happened, right? And because the way he thinks about it, the information here, is he's just asking why constantly. And if you watch this whole video, you understand what I'm talking about here. And again, like, what he's doing here is he's thinking out loud. So he's studying out loud. And what ends up happening actually is you end up understanding this topic nearly as well as he understood it, right? And then you could actually end up doing the exam for this person, right? So what's practically happening on here, obviously not to 100% degree, but to some extent, he is studying for you. All you're doing is listening to him, and you're getting all of the benefits of actually thinking deeply and studying, which is really interesting. So you definitely want to give this a watch. This will improve your mind maps, and then obviously watch that playlist, and that's how you want to get good, right? This is how you want to get good at your mind maps. Secondly, your structure for your learning is there's a reason why I sort of didn't go on to that other video, but it's cramming, right? So this is how you save a lot of time. He's got a perfect video on this. He's got quite a few videos on these actually. But let's go back here. It's this video where this one, I study 1,000 pages in 3 days. So I came across this when, again, I was like probably a few months away from my A-levels, and I did actually have somewhere near 1,000 pages to study, right? And this sort of gives you an overview on how you can sort of do this, right? And also this video again is showing you how to cram right. So I'll explain it anyway, but you want to watch these two videos as well. I won't leave them in, I won't leave all the links in the description. I think you can go out and find them yourself. But they're all in the video. They're all on Justin's song, right? They're all on his channel. So the structure here is cramming. So what you want to do, instead of waiting and doing nothing and then cramming right before the exam, what you can do, and this is what's going to separate you out from everyone else, and this is why you're going to have, like, you're going to be able to just study barely at all and just do better than everyone else, right? You just cram at the start of your course. So if you're in year 10 and you're starting year 11 soon, I mean, you could just start cramming now, right? What you can do after that is you can chill out, right? So after you've crammed to a point where you're comfortable, you can chill out, and all the way until your exam. You don't even have to revise before your exam, because what you'll do here is you'll cram so much, and then all you have to do is go to the lessons and pay attention in the lessons and ask questions in the lessons on anything you're struggling on. And in reality, if it's done right, you don't even have to study after this first section. All you have to do is go to the lessons, pay attention, you ask the teacher any questions on anything you're stuck on, and fill out these gaps that you have in your cramming. These two videos this one is very important. So this will it'll show you exactly what we're talking about, right? So you're using this mind map method, but what you're doing is, instead of waiting for the teachers to teach you everything before you even start your course, right? So let's imagine GCSE biology. As a year 10 or an A-level student who's in year 12, you haven't finished all the content yet. And even better if you haven't even started the content. If you're doing it that early, that's even better. What's going to happen at this point, right, is what you can do, you can look at the content yourself. You can look at the textbook, you can look at videos, you can try and learn everything, and give yourself a hard limit, right? So like, give yourself like a 3 days to learn all of, okay, maybe give yourself 3 weeks, right, to learn all of the topics in all of your exams, right? So the good frame of mind here is to imagine, I'm gonna say for example, you're in year 10 and you're coming to your exams. You're in year 10 and you're looking to do your GCSEs. Because a dude was commenting about this, right? So what you want to do is imagine that your actual GCSEs are in 3 weeks, right? And that's not just your year 10 and end of years, right? This is your actual GCSE. So there's half of the content that you haven't even covered yet is in 3 weeks. And so now you have to think, you're in this headspace, right? Now you have to think, how would I maximize my score now? What would I be learning to maximize my score now? Because I haven't even learned half of this content, right? I barely remember anything from my year 10 classes, and I've only got 3 weeks to get as high a score as possible. Obviously it's going to be shit. Your score's going to be shit if you're trying to learn everything in 3 weeks. But the frame of mind that this is going to get you in is, you're going to think, okay, I'm only going to learn the most important topics, right? So what you're going to do, For all of your subjects, you're just going to look at like the biggest and the chunkiest, most important topics that are going to get you the highest amount of marks, and you'll learn those, right? So you want to start building out a mind map for every single one of your subjects, and only just like think about, you have to be really sparse with your time, because you've got 10 different subjects, you got 3 weeks. What you're probably aiming for is like a 4 or a 3 in all of your subjects, right? So like you're not going to do good, but you're going to have this map of the entire subject, right? So like I showed you actually in my photo picture, right? If we look all the way here, this is exactly what I did. So if you look here on my first ever mind map, where I'm actually taking this seriously with my biology, I'm doing paper 2, right? And all I'm doing is skimming through the textbook of the paper 2 side, and I'm looking at the most important information. So this is all of paper 2, and look how small it is. Like, look how little information there is. All I can really fit in there is like the biggest topic. So there's a whole topic on heart, whole topic on nerves, there's a whole topic on evolution, that's that. There's another whole topic on kidneys and stuff like that, and genes. And this is sort of what I get. It's like a skeleton. It's a skeleton framework of my entire biology course, and that's what you want to do. So after this sort of cramming session, for each of your subjects, you'll have this skeleton, right? I don't know if that's a good drawing. You'll have this skeleton of how topics relate to each other, etc. Because that's all you're looking for. You're just looking for relationships. You're not going to get good marks. You're not going to remember any like specific details. You're just looking at the biggest topics and how they relate to each other. You don't have to force yourself to do this in like 3 weeks, etc. But like, you want these skeletons. This is the most important thing. And what you're doing, because a lot of this you don't actually have a deep enough understanding of the subject to make this skeleton. What you're going to be doing a lot of the time is you're going to be hypothesizing about connections. So you're going to think, okay, I've just learned about the heart and I've just learned about DNA. You know, I think these two are related, and I think maybe it's something to do with the fact that DNA is used to make the proteins in the heart cell wall, and I think maybe somewhere down the line I'm going to actually learn about that, and I'm going to learn about how heart cells are made, right? Something like that. And these are sort of the relationships that you have to hypothesize about. You haven't actually read this, but this is what you're hypothesizing. But you've got that skeleton there, and what you're going to find is, as you're going through the lessons, in your actual lessons, you're going to find these relationships are either going to be right or they're going to be wrong, and you're going to have to redraw these connections. And maybe DNA isn't related to heart at all, and it's only related to like nerves or something like that. And then you sort of have to rejig your mind map. But that's it, really. That's like all you need to do. You just have to get these massive skeletons of the most important topics in your subjects, get them all ready, right, for all of your subjects. And then you go to your subjects as you're learning in the lesson. You rejig those mind maps to make them make more sense, to make the connections more accurate. And you look at these hypotheses that you've made, and you sort of change them, and you can actually imagine that like you're actually really invested in these subjects at this point. If you're hypothesizing, first of all, that's putting you immediately into this section of evaluating, because you're trying to justify why something is connected to each other. But if you're hypothesizing about what you might be learning in the future, you're already quite invested in the subject at that point, and your brain is just going to think that this is important. You're going to actually sort of enjoy learning about this subject as well. Learning inherently is enjoyable. Studying isn't necessarily enjoyable, because most people aren't learning when they're studying. But what you can do, if you're doing this, you'll be learning when you're studying, so you'll actually start to enjoy learning about your subjects. But yeah, you're hypothesizing about them. You're trying to figure out how everything fits together, how the bigger picture makes sense. And by the end of by the end of actually finishing out your course, you will have something that looks like this, right? Something that looks like this, and you're just going to be so confident in all of these different topics. You're going to have such a much deeper understanding than anyone else. Even to the extent of like the teacher, you'll understand it to the depths that your own teacher does, right? And you can imagine this. This makes it just reinforces the point again. Like, think about if your teacher sat down and took your exam right now. He would probably get full marks, especially a GCSE paper. Even in some A-level papers, they'd probably get somewhere near full marks. And you have to think about, like, why would they get full marks, right? If you think about a good teacher, right? Like, you have to think, why would they get full marks? Because they're not going to sit down and revise for it. They're not going to go do past papers. They're not going to memorize anything. But for some reason, they're going to get full marks on your paper. And the reason they're going to get full marks is because they just understand the bigger picture. They understand how everything connects. They think about biology, for example, as an actual real life subject, like things that are actually happening with your body. And that's the difference, right? That's the difference between a teacher and a student. That's the difference between someone who doesn't have to study and performs at the top and gets the highest grades possible, while other people who study hours and hours on end and still don't get good grades. And that's pretty much it. So again, final few things that you want to do is watch like these 2 videos. Watch as much as you can from this fella. It sort of helps you out as much. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. You might want to actually figure out the structure before you go on into improving your mind maps. So you might want to rejig the way around I said these, but yeah, maybe figure out your structure first. So figure out what to be doing right now, and then slowly you can improve your mind maps over time. And hopefully you try this out. Hopefully by the time you end up in A levels or GCSEs or your university, you actually learn how to learn, and you are able to study very little and get very high grades. Okay, goodbye.